Hi everyone, welcome to my review of the Coen Brothers' Miller's Crossing in 1990. So here it is, Blu-ray Steelbook, rewatched tonight, and this is the third Coen Brothers film. And yes, very, very acclaimed. And yeah, this is the third Coen Brothers that I've reviewed on my channel. I've previously, of course, reviewed Big Lebowski and Raising Arizona, of course, which was the first watch, and that film, absolutely loved. I think it's a contender for my absolute favourite Coen Brothers film, and I think it's an absolute masterpiece. And of course, Big Lebowski is also a masterpiece. And I've seen three other films that I absolutely love from the Coen Brothers. A Serious Man, I've said before. I don't think I've seen it all actually, because I just couldn't quite get into it properly. And there was stuff to merit, but overall it wasn't quite for me. Maybe I'll rewatch it and find something, in it, and I'll feel differently. But not. The Man Who Wasn't There as well is another one actually that I've seen all the way through, and I had mixed feelings. It was, I think it was good. It was a good film probably, but I just didn't love it, and there was definitely a lot of flaws, things I just found too much, quirkiness and all that kind of stuff, and just for the sake of it, a bit too ambiguous, but in the wrong ways. But yes, I've said as well, there is a Coen Brothers film that I've seen that is very, very acclaimed, that I do not like, that I hate, and find out if it's this one in a minute, because I'll reveal. But yes, I absolutely love gangster films when they're done well, and Prohibition, Prohibition times is a really, really interesting time, and I think it's one of the most interesting periods of history, in recent centuries, and of course. It can make for great cinema and, of course, great TV. Boardwalk Empire is kind of a perfect example of that. And, of course, my favourite gangster films, you could say, are some of my absolute favourite films. Godfather 1 and 2 and Once Upon a Time in America being my absolute favourites. They're all in my top 30 films, and I just think there's been some absolutely stunning films, gangster films. Scarface, Goodfellas, the list goes on. Quite a lot of Scorsese films, but yes, Miller's Crossing is basically the Coen Brothers. Basically, if you'd seen the Coen Brothers film before this, a few of them you'd think, imagine if they could do a gangster film. What would it be like? That's what this is. That's their take on the gangster genre, and yes, very much specific to the Prohibition time, and it is basically very much like you could say they were trying to, at least it seems, going for what Once Upon a Time in America done, and there's obviously other different films that are kind of influenced, but it is, it's got some of as well the actual Coen Brothers trademarks. But yes, this film is basically Gabriel Byrne plays Tom, and he basically is the protagonist of the film, and he basically plays off two rival gangs against each other, and yeah, basically Albert Finney is in the film, he plays Leo. John Turturro is in the film, he plays Bernie, and as well, you've got some other supporting cast members. Steve Buscemi is in the film, very, very brief appearance, and it's basically it's about that time period. It's a gangster film, and this guy protagonist playing off two sides against each other, and just the struggle really against John Polito is one of the heads as well of one of the rival gangs. And yes, basically it's about that, and there's a love triangle in the film as well. And it's basically the Coen Brothers take on a gangster film, and it's a period piece as well. Now, I absolutely love period pieces as well. I think some of my absolute favourite films are period films. So yeah, this kind of was, I was thinking, going to be a film for me. A film that could make it onto my favourite films list easily. Could be one of my favourite Coens. And yes, just to note, of course, this film is widely regarded as one of their best, and many people actually say now it's their best, if not, definitely top 3. I watched this film last year for the first time, and I got the Steelbook, of course, then, and I was building up for months and months, just thinking, I really can't wait to watch this film, sit down and watch it, and see what they do with the gangster genre. And I watched it, and I have much respect, firstly for Coen Brothers films. The actors that are in this film, I like them. The people I've seen, I like them in other films, especially, of course, Steve Buscemi. And you know, Gabriel Byrne as well. He was great in The Usual Suspects. Albert Finney, great actor. And of course, the Coen brothers themselves. Yes, I could call them geniuses and masters when they're at the top of their game. You know, and basically, you know, everyone involved I have respect for. And of course, the fans, you know, if you guys, if everyone watching this likes the film, that's great. In my opinion, this is an awful film. And, you know, I'm not going to hold back. I think this is just dreadful. I watched it and I was in shock. That's just how I thought, you know, and I always respect people's opinions. But for me, this film is an absolute travesty. And I don't think, you know, I'll ever like a Coen Brothers film less than this. Maybe The Lady Killers and stuff, if it's as bad as people say. But this film, you know, is widely acclaimed, and no one really says it's bad. But for me, it is more than bad. It's awful. First of all, we'll start with the opening scene. Really sets it. Not only is it over the top, but it's boring. And you know, it's just meant to set the scene. It's kind of, you can say, some influences on how the Godfather scene is at the beginning. You know, the first one, and yeah, it kind of plays out like that, you know, in a way. And you've got some dialogue there, you know, and I was thinking when that was over, why am I not interested here? Why am I not compelled? Why am I not finding the dialogue itself exciting? This is Coen Brothers, you know, Joel and Ethan Coen, great writers, of course, and great directors. But here, you know, I just thought, wow, that was boring, and wow, that did not work. The tone of the film, it's just all off everywhere throughout the entire film for me. I don't think the tone works at all, you know, and when it is consistent, it's consistently boring, or it's consistently, you know, just too over the top. It just wasn't working. I didn't get interested in any of the characters, any of the setup of the film, of the rival gangs, the tension, the atmosphere. You know, the only thing I could say was, yes, there's some merit in the way they recreate, you know, the period, the actual production design is good, how they recreate the period. But the cinematography, actually, for me, has only got a small amount of praise from me, because I don't like the way this film's shot overall. There is some good shots in there, but overall, as I say, the colour tone is a bit too drab for me. Very, very dull. Not just this kind of rustic or nostalgic feel. It's not got that. I don't feel. It's just bland, dull, and you know, as well, there's too many medium shots, too many long shots on this occasion. I feel when the close-ups come, and sometimes the extreme close-ups, they're off-putting, and there's always someone doing an over-the-top expression or a bland face. You know, this is what it is throughout the film for me. It's a mixture between bland and over-the-top, and you know, that's the worst thing I can say about a film, really. When it does bore me, but then when it has moments that kind of jolt you with the tonal breaks of the over-the-top humour, you know, the dialogue, the acting, you know, it just doesn't work. Gabriel Byrne. Now, for me, an awful performance. I'm not going to hold back. He was great in The Usual Suspects, but here as a main protagonist, as Tom, I would say top 5 most boring protagonists I've ever seen, and even in that top 5, it's hard to actually think of maybe more than 2 that I can say is more boring than him. Just one of the most boring characters in cinema for me. Did not connect with anything, you know, with his character. The exposition was awful through dialogue. The way he has a relationship, you know, with his woman, is just not good at all. It's just not compelling. What they were trying to do, of course, with the violence and everything, wasn't effective, and it just came across, just made me hate him even more. And just kind of, it didn't really explore in a meaningful way. And all the scenes with them together, it's just awful. You know, I feel that it's not compelling in the slightest, and just uncomfortable, awkward, cringy, boring romance. One of the most boring. This is a love triangle, of course. Albert Finney comes into play there with the character of Leo, and he's not great in this film either. And just again, another boring character. I think the writing in this film is surprisingly awful throughout. I feel that none of the dialogue really I care for. I never connected with any of the the lines really at all. The characters were not well developed for me through dialogue, and as well the way that the film's shot does not add anything to the way they're relating to the surroundings, or really anything in terms of that. any uses of shadows or anything. It's very, very flat for me, I feel, the cinematography. The editing is, at its best, very, very basic, you know. At its worst is shameful. I feel that the zoom-ins as well, which comes in the cinematography, the zooms near the end of the film are completely off, completely breaking the tone. Just mental. Please tell me in the comments, what is that final scene? You know, this one of the worst. Not the one with the hat and everything, the one before that, with the showdown, you could say, with the violence. I don't get that scene at all. I don't know what they were going for with the tone, with what they were trying to do there. Just shocking, to say the least, with the overacting and the tonal breaks there, and just the constant screaming from that guy. It was really painful, actually. And yes, you know, does the plot interest me at all? You know, other than the characters, of course, are dud. You know, Steve Buscemi is in the film a bit, and you know, one scene really for 30 seconds. You know, he kind of livened it up a little bit, but again, was actually kind of annoying, which never happens. He wasn't really much of a character, although he's mentioned quite a lot. But the rest of the characters are boring. They're annoying characters at times. They're boring, and again, very cold actually for me, this film, including the characters. So does the plot interest me? You know, the time period could add a lot of kind of opportunities to explore, you know, the plot. No, really not. It actually feels like a very, very poor imitation of Once Upon a Time in America. You know, the actual adult scenes, a lot of that, with the prohibition stuff, you know, the kind of, you know, involving the police and everything. Very, very bland for me. Never worked at all, and just very, very generic. The shootouts in the film are not well done for me. Personally, I feel very, very generic, boring, and just not well shot. You know, I don't think it's well shot really, most of the film. You know, it's just really, what a shame. This film I really hate, and you know, the first half of the film is painfully awful, almost unwatchable for me, because I didn't connect with any of the film at this point. The only thing I can praise is the opening credits / the score. The score is very nice to the film, and it's used sparingly. I think it could have benefited even more from using that, because that's one of the only things I can actually praise for the film, and it is nice. The credits is at the only point where it's actually used to a real effect. You know, it is really good, the credits, but really, how can I praise a film so much just for the credits alone? That's the only thing I actually really liked. I think it was very nice, with the hats and everything as well. It was very well done. My favourite part of the film is the credits. Now, that doesn't usually mean good things for what I feel about a film. And overall, you know, I hated it from start to finish, really. John Turturro is in the film, of course, plays Byrne. Now, he's kind of the brother of the woman that Gabriel Byrne is basically with. Now, John Turturro is an actor who is a hit and miss for me. I think he was great in The Big Lebowski, and the tone allowed that, you know, and it was really funny, well written dialogue. Performance actually matched the tone of the film. And in this film, you know, he's not been great in other things. Fear X is real low. In this film, he's not good. Very, very over the top. At least he's more lively, but that's not praise. That's just because a lot of the other characters' performances are just dead, really, for me. I feel at least he adds some sort of an energy to the film, you know, kind of an energy. But it is all wasted, and it's too far. Way too over the top. Now, the Coen brothers really do parodies well. They do satire, you know, they do over the top moments. In the special case being Raising Arizona, really throughout the most of the film, masterfully. They can do it. They really know how to do it. It's weird because that was before this film, so you would have thought they would have been able to perfect that in this. No, it has no place here. You know, all the humour, as I say, just falls completely flat, and it just drops, and just the over-the-top moments that come from John Turturro really feel out of place, matched, you know, with Gabriel Byrne. It just does not work on really any level for me, this film, at all. So overall, you know, I think many people love this film, and that is absolutely fine. Of course, I always respect people's opinions, and really, you know, I never get annoyed at all with rankings or anything. And, you know, people will put this at the top, or near the top. But for me, personally, just like for you as viewers, if you love the film personally, I really hate the film. I think I didn't connect with any of it really at all. I think it was a complete bore fest of a film, and just the characters, the writing throughout, just the way it was directed was pretty poor overall. Because it just didn't have any sort of energy, and just didn't have any sort of flow really for me. And I know people praise the flow of the film. I don't think so. The editing was all off. The camera work at times was absolutely flat out awful. Other times it was very, very basic, and just didn't, and many scenes where the characters are meant to be developed either goes nowhere, it's just the most basic of exposition, or it's just completely boring. And it bored me to tears. This film again, rewatching it, it's just as bad for me as I remembered, just as boring. And actually, Danny Boy scene, which I actually thought was really one of the only highlights originally, I don't even like that anymore at all. And that's not good. Basically, that scene for me was very, very completely over the top with the actual shooting and what happened with the guy, to the point where it just didn't work. And just not actually as good as, it just wasn't that good. It's quite annoying, and it just went on, and it just kind of a bit pointless as well. So really, there's nothing to. All I can praise about this film is the score, and when it is used, which is quite little, it is really impressive. It does, it is very nice on the ears. But this film, for what it is, it's a gangster film. Prohibition times, a potentially great cast. No denying that. Directors, of course, writers, the Coen brothers, they are absolute masters. As I've said, when they're on form. As well, a potential for it being a period film, and just for what it is. I think what a disappointment it was last year, and I went in, kind of thinking maybe it'll be a bit better than last time. Maybe I'll find something in it, because many people, of course, praise this film. Just as bad, if not worse, than I remembered. And it's just, I can't believe how little I feel for. I didn't feel any emotion for this film, and that's a shame, a real shame. It was very, very emotionally flat in every scene. It was just, as well, just quite B grade in a lot of times. Some of the acting, the actual punches, some of the ADR and all that. Just some of the way the scenes are put together, just not great. Camera work. Wow, this film. Miller's Crossing, I'd have to give it, this is my opinion, a 15%. And that is an awful film from me. That's one of the lowest scores I've given a film on this channel. And it's just my thoughts. I wanted to love this film. I've given it a second try. Especially with this kind of director series I'm going on with the Coens. But for me, I'll always hate the film, and it's absolutely fine, of course. Many people love it, and that's great. It's just one of them films that for me I don't agree with. Can't quite get out of it what most people do. It's quite maybe another film like Blade Runner, which I think is a good film, a lot better than this. I think it's a decent film, but it's one of them ones that is, I really wish I could have loved it, but I didn't. Like most people do praise that film. There's a couple of others, but generally, this film, just for me, it is an awful film, and it's just not one that I would say is a great film at all. To compare it to The Godfather 1, 2, I'll never quite understand that. And I respect opinions, of course, but for me, I can't, in my mind, get my head around that. For me, there's no comparing, them films at all. This film is just flat on every level for me. Complete bore fest of a film. The script is absolutely atrocious, and that really is a shame from the Coens. And the direction is poor. The cinematography at best is basic. Editing as well. Editing is sometimes off. The plot of the film is not well. It's not interesting. For me, overall, not great storytelling, and actually very awful. This film, for me, is just gonna always probably be my least favourite, or top 2 least favourite Coen Brothers films. And Blu-ray Steelbook, it's a shame. I was very, very disappointed with this. Just the performance as well. Marcia, Harden, she's not good in this film as well. The performance is just disgraceful for me. Complete borefest of a romance, and a very, very flat and dead film for me. Very lifeless. I've given it all. I've given revealed all my thoughts on this film. Not held back. And for better or worse, you know, I do hate this film, and that's just my honest opinion. But I love the Coen brothers overall. They're gonna, of course, be appearing on my list of favourite directors when I do that on this channel. They are masters when they're on form. But for on this occasion, surprisingly, against all odds, they managed to make a film I hate. So thanks for watching my review of the Coen brothers' Miller's Crossing.